Welcome back for another helping of oysters, clams, and waddles presented by Bolin Media. I am Ross Bolin here with Barrett Dudley to discuss episode 4 of The Penguin on HBO starring Colin Farrell and Kristen Milioti. How we doing, Barrett?
Ross, I wanted this all to be yours.
Here we go.
I wanted you to run this podcast. All of this, it was meant for you. But here you have to bring up the Arkham facilities and the time that I sent you there when you know how it hurts your co-host so.
You look exactly like
Why
him.
would you do
The sunglasses are very much the style that he's wearing.
Yeah, I was watching that episode and I was like, I think I own those.
Yeah.
They're not exactly the same, but they are.
But they're close,
They're
though.
very, very close.
Similar look.
Similar shape, similar rose-colored lens. So.
And you've got similar hair, frankly. So it's kind of eerie.
Switching up the accent work today, although, I'm sure there will be an opportunity to get a little penguin in there.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
Yeah, we're doing all right. What an ep. What a dark, and yet somehow
Comical?
Comical in that it was very comic booky to me.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I don't know what the word for that is. Comic booky? I'm going with comic booky.
Things like Magpie,
yes,
in particular.
Yes.
Yeah, that I kind of like that the show has done a good job of continuing to insert comic book vibes throughout.
Yeah.
But definitely a dark one.
Maybe I should say maybe more graphic novel.
A little bit, yeah.
Similar.
You know.
Well, right, I don't know. But sometimes, they differentiate between those two things. Like Watchmen was a graphic novel, not a comic book.
I could be wrong, but I feel like the difference is that graphic novels are a lot longer.
Yeah.
But it's like the same.
Yeah.
Same
art form.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same medium.
Illustrations with
right.
little blurbs.
Yeah.
So on and so forth, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's do this one. Episode 4 is titled
Speech Bubbles.
Cent'anni, which is an Italian phrase I learned watching one of the greatest movies of all time, The Godfather Part 2, because I am a true cinephile. Do you know what cent'anni means, Barrett?
I just thought it meant cheers, like salute.
Well, it's a cheers.
Yeah.
I think salud
is like
salud is the more like direct
toast, just one word.
Just straight up cheers.
Yes,
yeah. You uncultured swine, but it means 100 years. And to quote Connie Corleone, it means we should all live happily for 100 years. The family. Yeah. So this one's written.
Ross,
oh God,
I wanted you to take over this family.
It was written by John McCutcheon, who's actually the writer on The Wheel of Time, Barrett's favorite show. One of the writers anyway. Directed by Helen Shaver, who I don't know her name, but I do a little IMDb research. I got to do my research leading up to the pod.
Yep.
She's about as veteran of a TV actor and director as you could possibly get. She's done a ton of stuff over like a 40-year career. This one starts off with a flashback to the end of episode 3, which, as we discussed on Patreon last week, was something we were kind of curious to see if maybe they would do because it was such an abrupt situation there that unfolded. Gives us a different perspective of Mama Maroney and her crew rolling up, Victor saving Oz by crashing the Maserati into one of the henchmen, and Oz abandoning Sophia.
Yeah, at the end of episode 3, it's really all from Vic's POV, and so they kind of like flip it on us and replay the scene more from Oz and Sophia's POV.
Yeah, it was very well done, and Maroney tells Sophia that it was Oz who killed her brother, which is a big deal, obviously. Oz begs for his life, and really we get like Oz in his purest form here, just like survival instincts, screwing over whoever he has to screw over to maintain. He says he only needed Sophia to get her drug operation, that he was going to bring it to the Maronis, and then we see him making eye contact with Sophia from Victor's car as he decides to leave her behind. Sophia is able to crawl to safety, calls Julian Rush, her therapist, as she loses consciousness. And from there, we flash back.
Was her head wound just from falling on the ground? Just getting slammed on the ground?
Getting knocked over.
Okay.
Because when she wakes up later in the episode, at first I was like, holy crap, was she like grazed by a bullet or something? But when she wakes up later in the episode, she seems like she's physically fine.
Yeah.
So when she loses consciousness, we flash back to over 10 years ago with a younger and much less traumatized Sophia. It's like her before all of the shit that we have to watch her go through. But it's like a noticeable difference in her personality. She's like brighter and, you know.
Yeah. And that veteran director that you talks about, she was saying in the kind of the inside episode look, that was very intentional. They used a lot of light, which we don't get much of in the Penguin. So it was very bright and airy, and there were florals and like, a lot of natural light. And so that was definitely something that they used to be like, this was the innocent times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a well done distinction.
Yeah.
But she's given a speech at a foundation raising money for a charity that provides women and girls with life-saving services. She mentions that her work with this charity was inspired by her own mother struggling with depression and taking her own life. Oz is also there, and they youthed him up as well, mostly by making his hair darker.
Hair thicker
and darker.
Yeah.
But at this point, he's nothing more than Sophia's driver. So this is like the beginning of his crime family career, serving as the boss's daughter's driver.
Yeah.
After the event, a journalist approaches Sophia and questions her about a woman named Yolanda Jones, who worked at the Iceberg Lounge, which, as we know, Carmine Falcone owns, and it's the club that Penguin is in charge of in The Batman.
Yeah.
With Pattinson. Yolanda, this woman that gets mentioned, apparently committed suicide last week by hanging, and the journalist points out there have been several other women that all died by the same means, and I think all worked at the Iceberg Lounge over the course of like several years. This kind of keeps happening. And from the jump, at least for me, it seemed like kind of obvious that, oh, wow, these are the women that are going to get pinned on Sophia, how she's going to become the hangman.
Yeah,
right?
if even if you're like a notorious crime boss with the whole police operation in your pocket, I don't know, like maybe differentiate between the way that you're killing these women,
the way that you're staging their alleged suicides.
Yeah, because when all of them are dying the exact same way, it
kind of leaves a trail of breadcrumbs there.
Yeah, it seems like a pattern at that point,
right?
You know? Yeah.
Weird move. Maybe because he wanted to later be able to pin it all on one person. I don't know, but yeah, that's definitely
just
questionable strategy there, from Carmine. And the journalist is clearly implicating that Sophia's father or someone else in their inner circle. Even bringing up Sophia's mother. And pretty immediately, Sophia is like visibly wrestling with this idea and the possibility that maybe it was her dad that killed all these women and her mom. So as Sophia and Penguin drive away, we get a further flashback to Sophia as a little girl discovering her mother's hanging corpse in her bedroom, in her mother's bedroom. Very unpleasant stuff. Like a lot of this episode felt like a horror movie.
Yes.
I guess kind of, appropriately so. We're in the middle of October here.
Yeah, it was. But yes, the timing was interesting, right? Because we are here in the middle of October. It is spooky season, and this felt very Halloween-y. It was I was getting kind of like all the Netflix show vibes.
Yes,
the ones, the Haunting of Hill House, and
that whole
series, that whole series. I was kind of getting some of that a little bit,
definitely.
But I thought that this episode as a whole, especially these scenes, but even some of the Arkham stuff, I kept thinking about like it was very haunted house, esque, like a lot of. Not necessarily like jump scares, but that is the vibe.
Just really spooky.
That they were laying down is not only like the psychological torture and kind of like inhumanity of a prison / asylum like that, but it was all very like supposed to be extra horror-y and spooky.
You mentioned the Netflix Haunting of Hill House and all that type of stuff. Also,
Bly Manor, Midnight Mass.
A little bit of American Horror Story in there as well, I would say.
Yeah.
Especially because there's a whole season of American Horror Story that focuses on a psych ward.
Okay.
Where things kind of get crazy. So next, Sophia has dinner with her dad, Carmine Falcone, and her brother, Alberto. Alberto leaves to handle something, presumably drug-related.
Probably.
And Carmine tells Sophia that he wants her to take over the family when the time comes because her brother is a mess. And they didn't go too heavy on it, but this would obviously be a big deal because Sophia is a woman, and which she points out. She's kind of like, well, what about the rest of the family? And Carmine says they'll go along with whatever he says. I think he says they know you're mine.
Right.
And they'll go along with whatever I say. But Sophia's clearly being, like, she's bothered by something, and when Carmine presses her on sharing it, she brings up her mom and her mom's death, and she says she doesn't remember her mother being sick or depressed. And Carmine says her mom was good at hiding it and gets upset with Sophia for bringing this all up in the first place, and at this point, you should be putting two and two together. And
asks if she went to therapy, like basically like begging for any scrap of information.
like, give me something so I can believe you and let all this go.
Right.
But he does not. He also, as we mentioned, he's wearing sunglasses all of the time.
The whole time, every time, all the time. Yeah.
Never takes them off.
Correct.
Doing the P. Diddy thing.
That's how you know.
It's a red flag. It's a red flag. I mean, they give us another flashback later in the episode back to the bedroom where Sophia discovers her mom. And like when Carmine comes in and like pulls her away and comforts her and he's like, don't look. And she looks up at him and she tries to remove his sunglasses so she can see his eyes.
Right.
And he like abruptly pulls them back on over his face.
Correct.
Very, very, yeah. So that's his thing. In this episode, we also get a good look at like Penguin and Sophia's relationship before the deterioration and the betrayal. And it does seem like Penguin genuinely cares for her on some level. And Sophia likewise cares for him. Like she defends Oz when Alberto refers to him as Penguin. She's like, don't call him that. You know? So they've got a little...
There's some warmth there.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a budding friendship potentially, and then there's some coldness too at times. But yeah, you kind of think that we're getting the idea that these two people, are friendly.
They bonded on some level.
They've bonded. Yeah.
Sophia asks her brother Alberto if he knows whether or not their dad ever had relationships with any of these dead women. So now she's poking around, right? But all that Alberto can say is that those girls weren't exactly the relationship type. Sophia goes on to question whether or not how much they really knew their dad, right? And Alberto can only respond with a joke that their dad actually works for Mossad and all of the girls in the club are trained assassins. So he doesn't really have any answers, is the point. Sophia, again, meets with the reporter who shows her that autopsies of these dead girls revealed signs of forced strangulation and that they had defensive wounds as well, all of which was left off the police reports. So not only are we getting more evidence that these were murders, not suicides, but also that like the level of corruption within this system here in Gotham. The reporter wants Sophia to help her get employee records from the Iceberg Lounge and then more importantly, the like underground version of the club, which I think is called 44 Below. And Sophia, rather than go along with that and helping the reporter and digging any further on this, kind of freaks out, threatens the reporter, and bails. In the car, Oz tries to warn Sophia that meeting with a reporter is not a good idea. And this is when you get some of the coldness. She's like,
right.
I don't care what you think. You're just a driver, and that is it. Stop talking. Later, at a party in the Falcone residence, the Penguin approaches Sophia, and she's like, Oz, what are you doing inside? Is that a new jacket? So, like, clearly, as her driver, he is not usually a part of their social circle.
Right.
He has to wait outside. Also, he obviously has already caught a come-up wardrobe-wise, which is all as a result of him betraying her, clearly. But he tells her that her father wants to see her in his office. So she goes in there, and long story short, Oz told her dad that she was talking to a reporter.
Dropped a dime on her, man.
Yeah. And her dad is not pleased. It is a very intense scene. She asks her dad about the scratches on his hands from the day that her mom died. She had defensive wounds as well. And he accuses her of being confused and sick and tells her to go home, that Oz is going to drive her home. I thought he was about to kill his own daughter there for a minute, but obviously we know that she doesn't die because we've seen her in the present day. But not that what he does is much better. But on her way home from the party, it seems like they don't make it very far because Oz is still trying to explain to Sophia that he did what he did for her own safety and that her dad employs him, so it's kind of part of his job to make sure that his daughter's not getting in any trouble with reporters and the like. And Sophia and Oz are pulled over by police who are clearly on Carmine's payroll because Oz knows them. He is directly speaking to and naming one of the officers. And Sophia is arrested for the murder of Summer Gleason, who is the reporter.
Yep.
As well as Yolanda Jones and
all the other women.
The other women, yeah. As she's getting dragged away, she asks Oz if he's the one that killed Summer Gleason for her dad, and he acts like he doesn't know what she's talking about. And she's like, call my brother, call Alberto, I need somebody to help me out here. So question, do we think, obviously Oz spilled the beans.
Yes.
He told Carmine that Sophia was talking to a reporter. Mm-hmm. Do we think Oz went so far as to then kill the reporter for Carmine?
No, I don't think so. And I was, all of this as it was kind of shaking out had me trying to recall the exact kind of exchange that they have in episode 3 about what he did or didn't do. And I kind of, the way that I remembered it is more like her trying to convince him to admit that he did something that he but then in this episode, it's very clear and on the surface, and they both are acknowledging that he did rat her out to Carmine about talking to the reporter.
So she already knew that. He's admitted it to her.
Right. So it seemed like that. So then I was trying to go back, and I was like, okay, well, maybe she just wants him to admit that that he knew what he was doing by telling her dad about the reporter, and that was that worth it because it obviously got him in the door and a promotion and the new suits and more money and all the operations and all that. I think that it probably takes away too much from Oz as a gray kind of anti-hero if he killed the reporter and knew that all of this was about to be pinned on Sophia.
Yeah, because there's even a line from Oz in the present day from episode 3 or 2, I can't remember, where he says, I don't regret what I did because it got me everything I have.
Right.
But I had no idea what would happen to you.
That's right.
I obviously didn't think that your dad would lock up his own blood in Arkham.
Yep.
And so it's just weird because you spend a lot of this episode, and we'll get to some of the other scenes where they're showing you this guy Oz that you've sort of warmed to over the first 3 episodes, and you're trying to root for and see as this anti-hero is a really big piece of shit, right? That he'll do whatever it takes for himself to get, a leg up and to continue to climb the ladder. And in the scene though, where she's being dragged away by the police, you believe him.
Yeah.
You believe Oz that he's I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. I don't know what's happening here. This is insane. Let her go. He's fighting off the police. They're holding him back,
right?
Type of thing. So my read was the same. I don't think he killed that reporter. I don't think he knew how far this would all go. I don't think he knew that she would get locked up in Arkham or any of that.
Yeah, the way it seems like is that he had a piece of information that he knew he could use to kind of elevate himself, and he took that opportunity, and the fallout was far more severe than he anticipated that it would be. But it did get him all the things that he talks about. He got all of the and that's what he kind of acknowledges to Sophia in episode 3 is that all of that was actually worth it.
Yeah. Reading Oz, the difficulty of deciphering just how bad he is a big part of what makes this show so good so far. Because this episode in particular, you're just Jesus Christ. Once you see the hell that she goes through, which we'll obviously get to in a second, it's harder to like him, for sure, right? Want to learn a new language? Well, the best way is to uproot your entire life, drop yourself in the middle of a new country, and figure it out from there. But if you're not ready for that, you can still learn a language with the next best option. That's with Babbel. Today's episode is brought to you by Babbel. Speak like a whole new you with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that gets you talking. Wasting hundreds of dollars on private tutors is the old school way of learning a new language. Babbel's 10-minute lessons are quick and handcrafted by over 200 language experts, ready to get you talking your new language in 3 weeks, because talking is the key to really knowing any language. Babbel's tips and tools are grounded in the real-life stuff you'll actually need. Everything is focused on conversation, so you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. Babbel's courses are incredibly convenient. I've used them to try to regain my grasp on Espanol, and they make it super easy to learn how to order food, ask for directions, or speak to merchants without having to consult language apps while out and about or on vacation in a foreign land. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold, plus all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Get Babbel, travel. Here's a special limited-time deal for the Clam Fam. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/OCC. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/OCC, spelled BABBEL.com/OCC. Rules and restrictions may apply. So the rest of this episode gets dark.
It sure does, yeah.
While in jail, Sophia's lawyer and brother visit, and the lawyer explains that a bunch of her family members, including Uncle Luca and his wife, including Johnny Vitti and his wife, wrote letters to the judge saying Sophia has mental health issues, has a compulsion for killing animals, etc. Basically,
Yep.
saying she's got serious issues and probably needs to be confined to this asylum, right? So the judge has remanded her to Arkham State Hospital for observation and to be under their care until the start of the trial, which is, it turns out, 6 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very shocking piece of information to be given, obviously, and this is where we start to see the unraveling begin, right?
Yep.
She's like, oh my God, I can't believe this shit is happening. Her brother tells her, like, tries to get her, hyped up and strong to, like, face this adversity, that she can handle 6 months, that she's going to get a trial, and she's going to get out, and she's a fucking Falcone, so she can do this. He knows she can. So she's checked into Arkham, and the boarding process is not gentle. One of the things this episode did very well, as somebody who has been to jail, like, the way you're handled and treated like cattle during the, like, check-in process. It's not called checking in, but it's not a hotel. But, stripping you, checking your orifices, like...
Yeah, there's immediately, from the jump, like, humanity is gone.
Yeah,
like
it's dehumanization.
Yeah.
And, it's a tough watch, so...
Also, I gotta call out the Alberto line about, like, how you can do this. You're a Falcone.
Yeah,
that would have rung pretty hollow to me, seeing as how all the Falcones are the ones that just betrayed me and set my ass up and sent me to Arkham for, I don't know, somewhere in between 6 months and 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would have been like, what the fuck does that mean? Like,
what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah. I hate the Falcones. These are all terrible people that are pieces of shit.
Yeah, Alberto, at least in what we get to see here, is not the greatest, like, helper.
No, not really. And, like, there's still a piece of the story that they kind of leave out or are saving for later as to, like, exactly how
he got her out. Right.
But yeah, that just a funny line where I would have been like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, I don't remember any mention from episode 1 when Sophia first, like, shows up.
Yep.
About how she was released, like how she got herself out of there.
I don't remember either, no.
So I think you're right. It's probably something that they're waiting either to reveal or they're just never going to get into specifics with, but definitely interesting that, as Dr. Julian Rush says later in the episode, like, it was Alberto that helped him get her out.
Yeah.
So she's checked in, she's fitted with a neck chain and meets with the chief psychologist and Dr. Julian Rush, who will be conducting her psychological evaluations. Even though it was kind of like, something you could have predicted, seeing her now therapist, present day therapist, as one of these doctors in Arkham was kind of surprising, just because you're like, how is this relationship, like, how does it come to be, right? She begs them to hear that she's innocent, but of course they, ignore her. And there are just seriously ominous tones in Arkham from the jump. This is where it really starts to get, like, filmed like a horror movie, all the different shots and the cinematography of it, if you will. So she's put in her cell and told to get some rest, and immediately she's hearing, like, screaming and moaning coming from, like, the hallway and the surrounding cells. Then she meets Magpie through the wall. Magpie, like the bird. And she's immediately addressing Sophia as the hangman. She's like, you're the hangman, aren't you? I saw you on the TV. Magpie also tells her you get used to the screams and the sounds, which is comforting, I'm sure. It made me curious. Like, I was like, are we going to see any other Batman, like classic Batman villains in this place?
Is Magpie a classic Batman villain?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No. But just her character and the way she was behaving and her voice, it was giving Harley Quinn vibes.
Totally. It was like, are we gonna get could this be somebody? Could this be like
right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's some, we talked about who is this Julian Rush person? Like, is he gonna become somebody or
people have been theorizing that he'll be like Scarecrow.
Right. Yeah. So that's potentially in play, but I think they're probably just leaving all that stuff in the margins for the time being.
Yeah. Very curious to see what happens with his character, though, because clearly he's going to play some role.
Seems like it.
Right?
Yeah.
This guy's been a big part of Sophia's story here.
Right.
And more on him in a moment. Breakfast the next morning does not go well. She's heckled by the entire mess hall.
Yeah.
They're all yelling hangman and telling her
hooting and hollering.
Pretty, doing the whole, yeah. Magpie saves her a seat, and Sophia sees Magpie get served her happy pills. And the meds pretty immediately send Magpie on like some kind of a euphoric trip here. Like, This is bliss, right?
It's bliss.
The inspiration for bliss anyway.
Yes, correct.
Then Sophia notices a prisoner that is not chained and is clearly demented. Staring at her and like walking towards her, and she's like trying to get some help. She's like, "Is anybody seeing this? This psycho is unchained. Hello, why are the rest of us in chains? What is that? What is happening here?" And the prisoner says, "You killed those girls. She has like a speech thing going on. Prisoner picks her up by her hair.
She's basically moving in like backward spider crawl.
Right.
Like
it's none of it's straight.
And like
none of it's straight. She's like all twisted,
got a twist,
Yeah.
She's got a weird gait going and
doing the horror movie walk.
She's doing a horror movie walk, yeah.
Throws her to the ground, beats the shit out of Sophia. Nobody stops it. There's like several guards and doctors in this room. Yeah. Nobody intervenes. They all just watch on.
The fix is in, man.
Yeah, it seems to be. So Sophia comes to in her cell with like a badly bruised up arm. I think her arm was stomped on there. Was like the final blow that we see. Dr. Julian Rush comes in, and Sophia starts asking questions like, why wasn't that girl chained? And immediately Rush starts to sort of twist Sophia's perspective by like, he's like, so you think that was a coordinated attack?
Yeah, I think he's doing the thing that he is probably very used to doing, which is essentially just like pinning all of these preconceived notions on these women that are in Arkham. They're paranoid, they're crazy, they're this, they're that, and it's almost like I think you can tell that the job is for these doctors and psychologists to confirm that rather than investigate it or explore it at all.
Yeah, and this is also, it's like this episode is sort of like doing a callback thing to earlier history. Now, I don't know exactly. My read is that the Penguin is taking place modern day.
Yeah.
Right? So this would have been like in the early 2000s or something like that. When this,
in fact, there's been dates. There's 2022, I believe. So this is nominally 2012.
But back in the day, closer to like 100 years ago or whatever, women that became problematic in society were often locked up in asylums and accused of being crazy. It was like our version of like the witch hunt.
Ah, yes.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
I can't remember the name of the movie, but there's an Angelina Jolie movie where her son goes missing, and then
Girl Interrupted.
No, not that one.
Yeah.
She gets accused of being changeling, I think, or something like that.
Changeling, yes.
It's a really fucked up movie, really good movie, but very, very hard to watch. But she gets accused of being crazy, and they like lock her up in one of these places, and it's a mess.
Not to be confused with Ross's favorite show, The Changeling.
Yeah, that's totally different on Apple TV Plus. Fantastic season of TV that I highly recommend to everyone. No, we're being sarcastic. Didn't love that one. But yeah, so Sophia she's smart, right? So she's like, I see what you're doing. You're trying to make me sound paranoid. That is not the case here. I am being unjustly locked up, and like, what the hell? Why was that prisoner just allowed to attack me? So Rush tells her that the death of a parent, like what she experienced with her mother, can trigger anger and violence in patients. Again, just trying to kind of do, he's putting things on her that are not not fair. And he comes off, it's weird, because like, he's another character that I can't get a read on, Julian Rush.
Right.
He comes off as like a genuinely good guy and says his only motive is to help her. But Arkham does not seem like a place where a genuinely good guy would even be allowed to work. That's the thing that I'm like struggling with here. I can buy into the storyline like, well, he was a doctor. He became a doctor at Arkham, and he didn't realize like how crooked and fucked up this place was.
Yeah.
But I don't think, based on how fucked up it is in there, that they would even want somebody who was like a straight edge, normal guy working as a doctor, causing problems.
Yeah, I also think that he's maybe like, I think he's bought into the system prior to Sophia being there.
Yeah.
I think like she's probably, I'm sure that you're right there, that there's been injustices happening in Arkham for quite some time.
But he's not often dealing with sane people.
Yeah, correct. That's where I'm headed with this. And so the fact that she is speaking intelligently and articulately and continues to try to like reach out and essentially like ask for help in this way that seems really genuine and clearly has an effect on him where maybe it hasn't previously. That's what I think kind of ties into his later explanation that he ended up having to leave because he felt so guilty, because he was dealing with all this like remorse about how things had been operating at Arkham, basically.
Right, yeah. So she's taken into the mess hall and unchained and handed a fork. And then the prisoner that attacked her is brought in and chained to a table, and nobody says anything, but like the implication is like,
hey, you can
get your revenge, kill this lady with a fork, go do it.
Yeah.
So Sophia starts walking towards her, but then realizes that like, that's what the doctors want her to do, and she even verbalizes it like, you want me to hurt her to prove that I'm a killer. Unfortunately, the prisoner lunges at Sophia, knocks the fork away, gets the fork, and then stabs herself repeatedly in the jugular while screaming, "End it."
Fun stuff.
End it, over and over. Yeah, really disturbing. So then shit really starts to escalate. Like straight from that scene, we go to Sophia being strapped to a bed and given shock therapy. We get these little flashes, like they do shock therapy. She clearly passes out. She wakes up in her cell, right? And it just like kind of keeps happening. And in between, we see she starts peeling off the wallpaper in her cell. And she sees the wallpaper from her mother's bedroom where she discovered her hanging, which I think you could take it either way, but like I think it's more of like a symbol. It's symbolic that she's unraveling, right? She's losing her mind.
Yeah.
I don't think they actually went in.
That was my read. Yes.
And put her mother's wallpaper on the cells underneath the fight. Yeah. So ironically, the treatments that are being, that are supposed to be helping her are actually driving her insane. Yeah. So they torture the shit out of her, and the first few times, like before the electricity starts flowing, she's proclaiming her innocence and trying to fight. But after a while, they break her, basically. She's not yelling anymore. She's not wriggling anymore. She's just like laying there and taking it. At one point, she does like grab Julian Rush's hand and like tries to like shake her head no, like please make this stop. Julian Rush whispers to one of the other doctors, what if she's telling the truth?
Right.
Which is one of the main reasons I do tend to buy into him actually being a good person that's like, or at least, somewhat morally sound compared to his companions in here. She starts having nightmares about like finding herself hanging instead of her mother. Again, real horror movie type shit there. And 6 months into her stay, so she's been going through this for half a year, her brother Alberto visits her and tells her, unfortunately, there's no longer going to be a trial, that her doctor is claiming she is unfit to stand trial, and that the head of Arkham wrote a report and the judge agreed to it. And this really fucks her up. Like she just like gets up and like walks out of this meeting with her brother without even saying a word or looking back at him. She just like can't even believe that this is happening, right? At her next meal, on her way into through the cafeteria, Julian Rush tells her like, I didn't know Ventress, who's the head of Arkham, was going to write the report. I tried to stop him. I'm sorry, right? But she, again, just kind of has like this, 1,000-yard stare, and she's just moving along. Magpie is excited that Sophia will be remaining in Arkham because they're besties, and tells her that she'll get candy now that she's staying, and that she doesn't have to lie to the doctors anymore. And this sends Sophia on like a bit of a paranoid turn here, where she's like questioning if Magpie has been giving the doctors information on her. I think, again, it could go either way, but like, I don't think Magpie is actually sane enough to help the doctors. Also, I don't think the doctors need help pulling off what they pulled off here. So this felt more like a paranoid accusation than it did like a actual revelation of this other inmate.
I didn't know where to land on this. At the very end of that conversation, as Sophia is pushing Magpie on it, Magpie gets a little bit defensive about it.
Yeah, she does kind of.
And it pushed me to the, like, okay,
maybe
yes,
she was actually
helping them. And it I don't know. That all felt kind of right too. Again, I would say throughout this episode, it's pretty interesting, and they talk about this a little bit in the inside look as well. But this is the first time where it was interesting to kind of like get this origin story in a show called The Penguin, where I think we're really making Sophia the protagonist of the show.
Yeah, almost the main character.
The main character, right? And you really like. She is obviously a gray character too, with both dark and light, but she is completely a victim in this entire situation,
right?
Outside of essentially being associated with her family, who is part of organized crime,
but she was born into that,
right? So by and large, has not done anything wrong. And then here we see this kind of like an obvious critique on the justice system at large, which we hear often about how prison actually just turns people into criminals instead of rehabilitating them at all. I think that definitely comes into play. But we're supposed to be on Sophia's side, which adds to, I think, the idea that Magpie, who she brutally murders in this turn here, was working against her, was helping the doctors, was reporting back, giving them information.
In exchange for drugs.
Magpie, not all there. I don't know if you caught that.
No.
So she's also kind of innocent, right? They're just taking advantage of another
sick person
in this facility. So it's not like we think Magpie's death is justified here. I think we're definitely supposed to be like, man, this sucks. Look at Sophia, who to this point has done all the right things, has stayed clean, has stayed true to herself and
her morality,
and her innocence, and her morality, and is now finally broken by the system here. And right, like they kind of break her with the electroshock therapy a little bit, like you mentioned,
taking away the trial,
and then here it's kind of like the final turn into the darkness a little bit.
We have to watch her become the hangman. Yeah,
a little. Yeah.
It's very well done, because when we're introduced to her on this show, we're just kind of told she's the hangman. Mm-hmm. Everybody thinks she's a little crazy. There's like a slow trickle of information. Eventually we find out like, oh, she murdered all these women, and you sort of just assume all of that to be true, right? And then there's the line in episode 3 where she tells Oz, "I'm not the hangman." And you're like, oh, shit. What's going to happen here? This episode, we see how that all comes to pass, and it's pretty fucked up and disturbing. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's tough because now we've seen her commit cold-blooded murder already. Like she executes that other kid that was with.
That's right. Good reminder.
Yeah, that was with Vic when they were trying to steal the Penguin's rims or whatever. So like she's definitely become a villainous type of character.
She finds the capacity for this type of action. Yeah.
But as she tells Rush in one of these later scenes, like I'm not the one that is sick. And she says to him, like, and you're not either.
Right.
The world is sick. Yeah. So, like, this experience in Arkham messes her up so badly that she does pop out the other side like a dangerous person on some level. But it makes you question all that judgment that you initially had of her character when she's introduced, right? So, yeah, she hits Magpie with her lunch tray and then slams her head into the table over and over and over and over until, I'm about 99% sure she's dead there.
Yeah.
And then she says, "I told you, I'm fucking innocent."
Great line read, by the way.
Yeah.
That was good.
So from there, that was kind of like the crescendo. What's the word? The climax of the Arkham story, right? From there, we come into Julian Rush's office on his couch, present day, recovering from the wound she sustained at the Mama Maroney running up on her in the penguin situation. She takes a shower, gets a change of clothes, and then starts like rooting through Julian Rush's shit while he makes them like breakfast, right? And she finds like a few bottles of pills in his desk, and she's kind of just like looking around. Mm-hmm. She tells Julian Rush she feels like an idiot for trusting Oz, that she should have killed him when she had the chance. He tries to talk her into going to Italy. She mentions, like, if I'm not in Sicily by tomorrow, like my uncle's gonna kill me. And he tries to sell her on like getting a fresh start. Says she's only been out of Arkham for 3 weeks, which was like, when you've just watched all that unfold, what a head fuck. You're just like, she's been out for 3 weeks. He says she deserves like an opportunity to heal. He also admits that this is partially like a selfish desire because he wants her to feel better so he can feel better, and so he can feel less guilty about what happened to her in Arkham.
Right.
We get the information that apparently he quit after what happened to her in Arkham. Like at some point he was like, I can't fucking do this anymore, and he got the hell out of there, which of course in her eyes was also abandoning her because she was then stuck there without anybody to help her. She accuses him of liking the control he had at Arkham, treating her, rehabilitating her. And he's like, whoa, I helped your brother get you out, which, like we mentioned, we don't really get any detail around that. And she says she hasn't forgotten the way he looked at her. So curious. And, like, part of me is automatically geared to be like, oh, because he was attracted to her, right? Like, ooh, are they going to give us, like, some type of he took advantage of her type of storyline? But no, I think it was more complicated than that. I think he looked at her curiously, like, he doesn't, like you mentioned, he does not often deal with people who might even have a shred of sanity left. That she was an interesting sort of case study to him in whether or not she had even done anything wrong. And but she seems to be laying on like the vibe pretty heavily here. Like she gets in real close to his face. She's talking to him like a few inches away. You even question, like, are they about to fucking kiss? Like, what is this? What is happening right here?
Yeah.
So she certainly seems to be like trying to build the sexual tension between them.
I mean, I think she's kind of throwing it in his face a little bit. I do think that there is an accusation there of basically like, you liked me. You helped me, but you also liked having me there.
Yeah,
That's
she
part
asked,
of,
what was it like to like watch a person unravel?
Yeah. So I do. There's some weird tension there, and I definitely think that they're playing with this with the I think pretty clear fact that Julian likes her, or loves her, right? Like we get that. The first time that we meet him, he's kind of like cradling her, and they're very in
like
very,
overly
like,
affectionate,
close, intimate way. And here, I think you almost get the idea that this is a little bit more one way than maybe we had initially thought, and that if anything, maybe Sophia is just using his attraction to her to her advantage,
right?
And that's why I say here it's kind of like she's throwing that back at him, like. Not blaming you for that, but it was part of this sick little thing that happened at Arkham, and don't forget about that either.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good way of looking at it. She also explains how for 10 years, men have lied to her, right? Doctor after doctor after doctor told her that she's sick, and then she comes home and it's all the same, just more men lying to her face. She said, quote, they think I'm broken. I'm not broken. I'm not the one who's sick, and you're not either. It's the world that's sick. And then she, before walking out of the room, she says, you're right. I do deserve a fresh start. Mm-hmm. And you know what she's going to do. Like, she's going to go fucking on a murder spree here. So she goes, long story short, because the final scene is like, it's like 20 minutes of her back at the old Falcone mansion. But long story short, she crashes her Uncle Luca's dinner celebration of some kind.
Is it his birthday?
Something. I thought she mentioned like this dinner was for Alberto's memory or something, though. Yeah. So I don't know. But the whole crime family, all the important people are there. The family. So she airs everyone out, right? Yeah. First, she walks in and they're like, what the fuck is she doing here? Yeah. She gives it a couple of minutes, but then she's like, all right, enough of this shit. Like in the middle of his toast, she decides she's going to give a toast with her very full glass of wine. She airs everyone out for betraying her, for signing those letters, getting her locked up in Arkham. And then she kind of slow plays it, right? I thought, like, well, she's going to pull, like, an Uzi out and blow everyone at this table
I was definitely
away.
waiting for that.
There's that one little girl at the table that's kind of giving you, like, okay, well, she's going to have to wait, right?
Right.
which then obviously becomes a plot device. She does save this little girl. She like takes her out to the greenhouse, gets her to sleep out there. Then once the little girl is asleep, she goes inside. She basically murders them all by poisoning the air vents. Like she takes,
she carbon monoxide poisons them.
Right, from like some giant machine.
There's like she does. It's like the air vent that's like kicking out all the. It's basically the equivalent of putting a tube on your exhaust pipe and putting it in the car window.
But for the whole house.
For the whole house, yes.
Except for somehow Johnny Viti's room, which is spared
because his window is open.
Because his window's open, yeah. If you got a window cracked, you're good.
Russ, guys like me and you, this is why we sleep with one eye open and one window open, always. You can't get carbon monoxide poison if you sleep with the window open.
Yeah, you got to play it safe.
I've been trying to tell you that.
Yeah.
Because guys like me and you, we know that the way the world works, you got a lot of crazy people out there.
That's why we always keep one window in the podcast studio open as well. Because of the way the world works.
They'll poison you with the air vents.
Because it works.
Because it works.
Yeah. So, saves the little girl. Johnny Viti survives the initial poisoning.
I think on purpose. I think there's...
Because she's like, put your pants on, Johnny. We need to talk.
We need to talk. So it was... And remember when she's in the house and she like smokes a cigarette and she like opens up the window?
Yeah.
I think she went up to his room.
Okay.
And opened up that window. Maybe.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Because then
that tracks. Because she has a gas mask. She doesn't need her window to be open.
Well, and she sleeps out in the greenhouse.
Right.
But I think she walks up and smokes that cigarette in the room like right after she leaves the dinner, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Preparing this whole situation. So Johnny Viti's still at the table.
I think so.
When she's up there in his room opening his window.
I'm pretty, that's
okay.
Because then she walks in, his door's closed, but the window's open, and she wakes him up as if this was all part of the plan.
Yeah. I'm curious.
Because at first I was like, oh shit, she's grabbing the gun because she wants to look this one in the face when she kills him.
Because he's such a piece of shit.
Because he's such a piece of shit. But then it seems like she's going to use
She needs him for some reason, right?
Yep.
So the whole Falcone crime family is wiped out here, except for Sophia Falcone, who's obviously now the head of the family, and Johnny Viti, who I guess she needs somebody to do her bidding. And then there's the Penguin. Like, one, I'm wondering if they'll give us like some insight into her and Johnny Viti's conversation that obviously has to take place after this, like what it is that she wants from him and how she's going to get him to behave.
Right.
And then two, she now knows Oz, or thinks that she knows that Oz killed her brother Alberto.
Yes.
Which, as she mentioned repeatedly in the first few episodes, and we see in episode 4, he was the only one who came to visit her, that tried to help her, that eventually was able to get her out of Arkham with the help of Julian Rush. So she loves her brother more than anybody in the world is kind of the implication, right? So if Oz killed her brother, and she now knows that, on top of the fact that he was a big part of the reason she got put in Arkham in the first place, and he double-timed her again by playing both sides of the fence with the Maroney family and then, selling her out immediately the first time he has an opportunity. It doesn't seem like there is a path back to friendship for Sophia and Oz.
I think that this is...
That was it,
war.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm really, really interested to see, like, where does the Penguin go from here? Where does Oz go from here?
Yeah.
Because the Maroneys are no longer going to be okay with him. They just rolled up on him and seemingly were going to execute him in the street before Vic saved his life.
Correct.
He has destroyed his relationship with Sophia in what would be irreparable. Like it is not believable to me at this point that they could come back and see eye to eye.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer because I was really hoping that
we get some team.
There was like a partnership there, longer term.
But it didn't really lasted one episode.
Like episode and a half. Yeah, it was not long term. So I really don't know what to expect from here on out. We kind of had an idea that this episode might happen, that we might get like an Arkham flashback, right, to see what's going on in there. But we got 4 more. This was the halfway point.
Yeah, and here I thought this episode was really good. I'm quite enjoying the show. I think it's really well done. Christina Milioti was awesome in this episode.
Oh, she is. She deserves a ton. Her and Colin Farrell are powering this thing,
Yes,
man. Like,
yeah,
if you don't get
yeah,
those performances, this show could come off as really fucking cheesy and stupid. They're doing a great job.
Just to bring this back up again, and something that I'm sure we'll continue to talk about, but it's like there. I think that like watching the inside the episode. Everybody involved in this show is also really invested in telling a creative and interesting and cool story about these characters within the Batman universe, even though well, again, we're not mentioning the Batman. We're not
dealing with him. Yeah,
that's all very tertiary. But it's weird to be able to project plot points because I know that a sequel movie is coming that Colin Farrell will co-star in.
Right. Well, we all assume, right?
I think I
the
guess
Penguin is going to be
that's a
in
good point. But I'm pretty sure he's locked into it. Like I'm pretty sure he's on board for the sequel.
Our assumption was he's in the Batman, the first one, right? They do the Penguin, and that the only reason he would do the Penguin is if he is also in the Batman 2.
Yeah. Because right now with the pace of things and the way things are shaking out, and we've discussed this a little bit, but like, there's no way that this ends well for Sophia. You can't have both of them moving forward. I don't think.
You mean Sophia can't also be in the Batman 2?
Correct.
Right.
I don't see a world where that is workable. Because of what you just said. This seems irreparable.
Yeah.
This guy killed her brother, her favorite person in the world.
And also kind of got her locked up in Arkham.
And has also been two-timing her for the last 12 years, basically.
Yeah.
Like,
there's no coming back from that.
There's no coming back from that.
So, no, I'm with you.
So
reading the tea leaves, it's like, well, the Penguin's going to come out on top.
Seems like it.
Clearly.
Show is named The Penguin.
It's not called The Hangman.
Right.
Or Sophia Falcone. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's an interesting part about like having that knowledge and having the show be in the universe. It's just one of the kind of downsides of it is that because otherwise it'd be like,
what the fuck is going to happen here? Is she going to come out on top?
Right.
Is she going to murder the Penguin? Are we going to watch Oz get like tortured and killed at the end of this in the finale or something? Yeah. Yeah, I have no idea, man. Look, it's been a great first 4 episodes. This was another high point. This was really well done. Like, the vibe shift was not expected. Like, I didn't see the show being willing to go as dark as it did.
Yeah,
it was very dark, very violent, very gruesome, very tough to watch at times.
How about this Carmine Falcone just killing everybody? I mean, just killing his wife, killing a bunch of women. Like,
fuck, man, that guy had serious issues.
Yeah.
I still wish they had what's the name of the actor who played Carmine in the Batman?
Yeah, Turturro would have crushed this. It's a bummer that he had scheduling issues. Mark Strong was fine. He was, but you could feel almost like the fill-in, the stand-in nature of it. Because Turturro would have crushed this.
He was one of the best things in the Batman to me. John Turturro's rendition of Carmine Falcone, because it was like creepy and understated.
Yeah, there's something. John Turturro has a great ability to play a little bit creepy.
It's just off, right?
A little off, yeah.
And he definitely did the sunglasses thing, right, which they carried over here.
Yeah.
But you couldn't tell, like, is this guy kind of cool?
Right.
Or is he like just that psychotic? And now we know he was just that psychotic. Not only a crime boss, but also like low key or high key, a fucking serial killer.
Yeah.
Right? And specifically with women and his own wife, which is frowned upon. In society.
Yeah.
We don't like that.
Not
so.
great.
No, they've done a really good job playing with this thing. Like I've said kind of repeatedly now, every week I'm impressed because they could have mailed this in, the Penguin. They could have mailed this in. And I mean make it like a C+ level show that just, kind of pushes things forward, sets up for the Batman 2.
Right. The 3-year gap for the films.
Right. And then just kind of let it be what it... But I have not watched any of the inside of the episode stuff that you've watched, but it does sound like you just said you got the impression that all these people were very dedicated to telling an interesting and well-done story.
That is very clear that all these people like signed up for this because they thought that this was a great place to tell an interesting story.
And so far, so good. This one, very little Oz, right? Like we get, the bit of him in the flashback or whatever, but not a ton moving forward from there. And then almost no Victor. So I am going to go ahead and guess that they're going to be at least one more of these like bottle episodes.
Well, there's got to be one. I feel like we kind of need one for Oz, don't we?
Right, that shows where he went from there, like what he did during the 10 years, maybe.
Maybe, or even more, because Episode 3, kind of your Vic origin story. Episode 4, kind of your Sophia origin story.
Maybe your Oz origin story?
I feel like we need a little bit more Oz origin story, right?
Like
Maybe
with Mama
some
Cobb?
mom stuff factoring in. Yeah.
She's been out for a couple episodes.
Right.
I could see a flashback origin story episode to Oz's experience when his brothers died and him and his mom going out to the club or whatever and like her influencing him to kind of become who he is today or whatever, because we obviously have seen that she's a pretty heavy influence in his life. It seems like he's almost doing all of this like for her. She's like, make me a queen.
You're right. Yeah.
So another good one from the Penguin here though. This was impressive stuff. Very well done. Very dark. Not my favorite Sunday night watch.
No, yeah. We watched it last night, and it required a chaser for sure.
Oh man, brutal violence. So Barrett and I will be back later this week on Patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles, taking hotline calls from the members of the Clam Fam that are there on Patreon supporting us and further discussing and digesting episode 4 of The Penguin, as well as just everything we've seen so far on this show. If you're on Patreon, if you're in the Mollusk Militia, remember, get your hotline calls in. Ask us questions, give us your theories, your takes, your opinions about what we've seen so far, and then any responses to anything that Barrett and I have said on the podcast as well. Patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles, where we dive deeper into each episode every week, driven by hotline calls from listeners. Subscribe on Patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles now and enjoy a 7-day free trial so you can see how awesome those episodes are. You can check out the first 3 hotline call driven episodes we've done for The Penguin. Up to this point, we've had a little time each week to discuss other things we've been watching as well, so it's not all Penguin talk. There's also, some other shows that Barrett and I have watched, some movies and whatnot that we discuss a little bit, spoiler-free and et cetera.
I've been getting some good questions from the Mollusk Militia. So.
Yeah. Also, please support our sponsors.
Very fun stuff.
Support our sponsors. This week we had Babbel.com/OCC to get up to 60% off at Babbel.com/OCC. Check out Bolin Media's other shows, including the Ross Bolin podcast, my personal podcast. And if you're an F1 fan, check out Formula Bone, where Jared J-Bone Borislow gives you a recap and a preview of every F1 race all season long. YouTube.com/@Formula Bone is the best place to watch those, but they're also available on the podcast platforms as well. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at WR Bolin. Mr. Dudley, where can the people follow you?
Oh, I'm at Barrett Dudley across the entirety of the interweb.
Oh, wow. Everywhere, huh? Even on the old...
LinkedIn.
Okay, good. Yeah. I was going to say porn sites. Go to bolinmedia.com/shop to grab yourself some merch. Thanks for being here today. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We look forward to hearing from everybody on social media as well as on Patreon. Until next time, waddle, 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 waddle.